With that breaking news about vaccine mandates. CBC News has learned later today, Ottawa is set to announce an end to vaccine requirements for travel within Canada. The change will also apply to outgoing international flights. There is hope this is a decision that will help reduce the delays and long lineups we've seen for weeks now at airports across the country. We're going to start with Janice McGregor, who has the latest details this morning from Ottawa. Janice.
Good morning, Heather. Yeah, I think, as you look at the landscape, you really have to conclude here that politically, vaccine mandates, at least for travelers, have just become way too hard for this government to sustain. Federal officials justified them last fall when they brought them in based on science, but we all know that this virus kept evolving from there. You might remember in last week's update from Chief Public Health Officer Theresa Tam, she was asked about whether mandates are still necessary, and she said, you know what? This is a question for politicians now. She said the 2 doses currently required by the federal vaccine rules, those are no longer enough. In her opinion, you need a third, you need to get that booster, but less than half of Canadians have had their boosters. So if they were to up the requirement, requiring 3 shots, they would either have to, give people a very long runway to get that done, or else you could have a very risky situation, a lot of disruption if you change that rule suddenly. At the same time, we know that the new variants that are circulating this spring, they are so transmissible that even having all 3 shots isn't enough to keep you from getting it. But as Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was reminding people in his tweet yesterday announcing that he has COVID now for the second time, if you've had your shots, that's still very effective at keeping people from being seriously ill, feeling all that sick. Opposition critics, business groups, they've all been pointing out for weeks that these rules have probably had their day. They're not as effective at keeping people safe as maybe they were a few months ago. And in the meantime, they impose extra costs, extra barriers. They create delays. It's problematic for certain industries, especially trying to recover, like hospitality and tourism. In economically hard times, they argue this is making things even harder. And we know that this has been a divisive political wedge ever since the Liberals introduced the concept prior to the election, and then, of course, spent the election touting vaccine mandates as a solution. So it might be a sigh of relief, really, for these to start falling away. I want to show you, though, a little bit of tape. Question period yesterday, the Conservatives still hammering about why these mandates are left in place. Adam Van Couverden is the Parliamentary Secretary for the Minister of Health.
Our government's priority has and will always be the safety and protection of Canadian health. Our government announced that mandatory randomized testing will be temporarily suspended at all airports from June 11th to the 30th. Unvaccinated travelers will still be tested on site.
Liberals are in fine form. They made a big announcement on Friday. Did they end mandates allowing people to return to work? Nope. No. Did they end mandates allowing all Canadians to travel by rail and air? No. Their solution was to pause random COVID testing for a couple of weeks. It was a joke.
So you get a sense there of the kind of hammering the government has been taking on this day after day. But it was interesting, they are not backing away from saying that mandates did serve a purpose, are useful. Sources that spoke to CBC News yesterday about lifting the mandate for travel said that the government could reinstate a vaccine mandate if it felt it needed to, should a deadly new variant emerge.
Vaccine mandates in place, Janice, for other things, not travel alone. So what will happen then to all of the other mandates?
Yeah, we don't know the full scope of what might be now rolling back. With the pressure on the airports, the focus had been on the travel aspect of the mandates. But are things going to stop there, or will it extend to other things, like the mandate for example, federal civil servants or people who work in federally regulated industries? If you can be on a little metal tube of an airplane beside someone who's unvaccinated, can't you be in a ventilated cubicle beside someone who's unvaccinated? These are the kind of issues that are going to come up. And then, of course, You have those cross-border rules for truckers that set off the convoy, all those blockades, the use of the Emergency Act powers. Are those going to fall away too, after all the controversy and historic debate that surrounded them in the end? And of course, then will remaining private sector employers follow the government's lead and pull back on any remaining vaccine mandates that they have? And then, of course, you've got to make people feel safe. So if you're going to pull your vaccine passports, do you have to double down on masking then? Or are masking rules also on the way out? We have a lot of questions here when the government steps up to announce this, Heather.
Janice, thank you very much. Janice McGregor in Ottawa.